Today, we have a very special guest, Sal Aguilar.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, it was, terminals were only open Monday through Friday, like 7 to 4. There was no appointments needed. You would just send your truck in, grab the container. Every time you think you have this business figured out, something new happens. There's a new wrinkle, a new curve, a new law, a new something. You laugh, but we used to have big racks, and they used to be called T-cards, and that's how you used to keep track of your containers before we had all these TMSs.
What kind of advice would you give someone who's fresh? I want to go into logistics.
Start in any position you could possibly get. Make a friend.
Hopefully everyone out there registered the trucks they needed to register. If not, you're probably late.
And it doesn't mean you won't be able to operate your truck. You just won't be able to operate it in the ports or anywhere else. You're gonna have to ramp up and get ready for it. It's just not gonna come easy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so thank you again for coming back to the LTL podcast. Before we do get to today's episode, we do have an amazing episode. We have an amazing guest, but when you're going to be watching or listening to the podcast, you might hear a few things in the audio that are not perfect. We did get some new equipment, and we are really trying to figure this thing out with you guys. We want to give you the best show that we can give you, so we're trying a few different things. So if you do hear some echo or things like that, just know that is something in the process that we're trying to fix to just make for a better show. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do like it, like, subscribe, and comment down below what your favorite part of the episode was. All right, well, I hope you enjoy the show. All right, so welcome to another episode of the LTL podcast. I'm Isal Torres.
I'm Eric Lopez.
And today, we have a very special guest with us today. We actually have Sal Aguilar with us. Sal Aguilar is actually the Director of Strategic Growth and Business Development at Franco Trucking. So thank you, Sal. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thanks.
It's going to be a great show today.
This show is actually super exciting, actually. We're going to have a lot of cool topics that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some recent things that have happened with CARB. I know that you're very, very, very invested into that.
Just a little.
So we're gonna get you. We're gonna get your take on all that. We're gonna get a little bit more backstory on Sal, where his experience is coming from. We're gonna talk a little bit about business during the holidays. We're in that holiday season. Hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas and prosperous New Year to everyone.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, about what the holidays look like business-wise, as well as some just office morale stuff that we do here too. We're going to get into some customer questions, which is really interesting, some stuff that some customers have asked us. And then we're going to kind of give you guys a little bit of a 2024 outlook of what we're going to be doing, or what we as a business are going to be trying to do in 2024. So, all right, so without further ado though, I do want you guys to get a little bit of a backstory with Sal. So, Sal, why don't you just tell us a little bit, man? What do you do at Franco Trucking?
What do I do at Frank? Good question. A little bit of everything. Strategic growth overall is try to help the business grow, right? Any way possible. Whether it's going out and acquiring new customers, trying to retain the customers we currently have, or just trying to find ways to save money. I mean, to keep the company running. Right. Where can we, make some extra money in the company, whether it's saving, through our safety department, whether it's saving through our operations, whatever we can, just, offering the best guidance, best knowledge of, close to 20 years experience I have doing drayage.
20 years, man. All right, well, we'll call it 20 years though, Sal.
You always got to round up.
It sounds better.
It's 12, but we're just going to go to 20. Yeah. No, so yeah, that's actually, so you've been in the industry for almost 20 years. What have you done in the industry?
Well, started out as a dispatcher, and just kind of worked my way up the chain. Been really at just a few different companies.
You're a loyal guy.
I am a loyal guy. Once I go somewhere, I kind of stay there, especially if I like the people I work with, right? So yes, I worked my way up, dispatch, then, dispatch lead, dispatch supervisor, operations manager, to terminal manager for a pretty large company out there. Um, and, the opportunity came to come here to Franco, and I've known a lot of the people here, a lot of the team here at Franco, so it was a pretty easy decision to come over.
All right, smooth transition, I
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah, and it's been 2 years already, which time flies.
Time flies.
Time flies. I mean,
I feel the same way. I'm like, I feel like I just being here as well. I'm like, oh, it's almost 4. I'm like,
That's insane.
But so being in the industry for 20 years, why? Why this industry? Why didn't you go to, from
Good
dispatching to like, I don't know, something else?
it's just fun. It really is. I mean, every time you think you have this business figured out, something new happens. There's a new wrinkle, a new curve, a new law, a new something that happens that then you're like, oh man, cool, let's figure it out.
You know what? And I like to think of this industry just like that, because kind of same thing. I mean, when I got into it, it was like it just kept pulling me back, pulling me back. It's like I don't know if we're just people that like pain,
I guess so.
or
I get, like challenges. I
Yeah,
mean, who
exactly.
likes easy things?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And we talk about this all the time too. I come from, I was working at the airport for a very long time, and the airport doesn't change all that much. I mean, from 9/11 to now, changed, but or before to now, very, very different. But for over the last 10 years, not much changes have happened. You're dealing with the same stuff. So when it came here, it's just every year there's something new. Every customer is new. There's a lot of areas of improvement, a lot of areas that have already improved, that just make it a really, really exciting industry.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, it was, terminals were only open Monday through Friday, like 7 to 4.
Wow.
It was, if you had a certain steamship line box, went back to that one terminal. There was no appointments needed. You would just send your truck in, grab the container.
I would love to live in that world.
No appointments.
No appointments.
And then we went into a night shift. Then we went into appointments being needed, and then
There was a thing before the appointments, the pre-gate.
pre-gate.
All you just needed was a pre-gate.
And then we also had hoop gates. Hoop gates were something they tried back a couple years ago, where they were opening the terminal like a third shift. And that we had that a little bit, but it was mainly Monday through Friday.
Wow.
You just have something on the board that says gate, and just what word can we put right before it? Okay, we'll do pre-gate to it.
I mean, you laugh, but we used to have big racks, and they used to be called T cards, and that's how you used to keep track of your containers before we had all these TMSs. Before we had, computer doing all the work, we used to have racks and cards where you used to write your container numbers down and keep track. Did you return that empty? You moved it,
How many times did you run into like per diem or demurrage at that
a
time?
lot. Yeah.
A lot?
Yeah, it was harder to manage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the thing that I talk about, which is innovation, how things have changed to kind of make the industry better, but there's still so much there. We talk, we had a few podcasts where we talk about AI and stuff. What's your take on that? I'm super interested to hear what do you think, how AI is going to affect this industry?
I'll be honest, I'm all for anything. Technology is great. The more info you have, the easier it makes everybody's lives. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to move a box from one point to another.
Right.
And we're trying to move it, get it to you guys, so you guys could unload it. That product keeps moving. We want to pick up that empty, return it back to the port. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, when you boil it down to at its easiest point, that's what it is. We're not trying to solve cancer here. We're not, trying to cure the world of all its ailments.
I mean, some people need their product.
But we, and I mean we as a whole industry,
Right.
have found a way to make it difficult.
When I was working back at the port, and I worked in the offices mainly, so I had a different take on things, right? But I knew right away, hearing about the industry, that there were such a a dinosaur feel to the industry, right? Like I would give out some ideas to some people and they'll be like, "Oh man, that'd be such a good idea." I don't know if it'd work in this industry though. And like things like that where there was almost like a resistance to moving technology in the industry, and it kind of, looking back at it now, I'm like, wow, how wrong were we,
Yeah, you can only do that for so long. It's good. Technology's just going to catch up. It's just
I mean, there's still a lot of things holding back, right? I mean, there's still, why can't we have one single source appointments for all the terminals? If you look at it the way it is now, there's all these different terminals and each one with an own way to operate and make appointments. Some have a 30-minute leeway on the front end of the appointment, some have a 30-minute on the back, some have an hour on each. It's no rhyme or reason. The job of a dispatcher is so hard right now in a customer service rep operations because they have to know how to manage every single different terminal. They have to know how to manage their customers. Where I'm telling you, back in the day, it was easy, easier, not easy, but easier, and it's difficult for them.
I mean, and it seems like even
even more reason though to get technology
I agree.
involved though.
I agree 100%.
yeah, I was actually at I think it was at Ayana when we went that the port I think it was the COO of the Long Beach port was talking about them trying to create some sort of system where communications between trucking and customers and the terminals are all like a one streamlined communication. Because I mean, the amount of people that you have to speak to in order to just get info on where a product is actually mind blowing.
It is.
I mean, they've been talking about it for over, I want to say over 5 years, but probably longer. Um, I mean, hopefully we get there one.
No, and then I asked the question too, and I was because he didn't bring up warehousing or anything like that. I'm like, well, what about like the warehouses in terms of them getting, And he was just like, that's a little far into.
That's the next step. Let's get the truckers first, then we'll get the warehouses. But yes.
And then so with all that experience, Sal, of you being in the industry, we just talked a little bit about the how invested Franco Trucking and logistics are with the youth. But what would you give? What kind of advice would you give someone just fresh? I want to go into logistics, or maybe not. They don't want to go to logistics, but just what kind of advice would you give someone to try it out?
Just start in any position you could possibly get. And if you really want to be into it, kind of make a friend. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I started out in dispatch, but I knew nothing about it. I'll be honest with you. I didn't even know what a container and a chassis was. I got hired to do kind of an inventory control in dispatch, where it was like calling the driver, get an update status, and put notes in the system so customer service could tell their customer if they got a call. Here's where the driver's at, right? But what I did is I started seeing all the other dispatchers. I'm like, this isn't so hard. I could do this. And so I started making friends, learning from them. And that just got me intrigued, got me into it. And then I just started making more and more connections, meeting different people in different industries or different parts of the logistics. And then, here I am. I mean, that's how I met, Francisco. Is through an event, and then we started talking years ago, even before I started working here.
Right.
So, always make friends, always make connections.
I think another thing you have to do for sure though is really be open minded, because
100%.
this industry, I feel, throws you so many curveballs that like you have to be open to take that challenge and run with it.
Yep.
I always try to think of it as the people that will succeed in the industry will have to be open minded and be willing to take challenges.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you're a big advocate on, like you just mentioned, networking, events, memberships. I mean, you're a big part of, you're a member of the CTA or the HTA, correct, or both?
At Franco Trucking, we're members of both CTA and California Trucking Association and HTA Harbor Truck Association. I'm actually, for this will be my second year, I'll be on the board of directors for the HTA. You know, helping
Congrats.
steer, thank you, helping steer the industry, for all the West Coast ports, not just our local ones, LA, Long Beach, but, up in Oakland, PNW, advocating, helping teach the rest of the trucking world to kind of, I don't want to use right or wrong way of doing things, but best practices, right? And that's the goal for the HTA in particular, is to educate, to advocate, to help, all truckers, right? And because at the end of the day, competition's good, right? I mean, we're not in there discussing rates or anything like that, but we're in there helping each other. If there's a certain terminal that's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, um, then we can. It's better that we all come together with numbers, right? Rather than Franco Trucking trying to fight an issue, because there might be three, four other companies having the same issue, and if we put our resources together, we'll probably be more successful. Um,
Yeah, I mean, well, what is the big term? Coopetition, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like you cooperate with your competition. And I mean, I've been to events as well. That CTA and the HTA hold, and I mean, they're wonderful events. I mean, you really get to connect and really get to see, especially on our side, because obviously we're not right on the trucker, right? I mean, we're mostly, in the warehousing side of things, and the brokerage side of things, where we get to kind of connect with those carriers, connect with those truckers, and really see the battles that they have, to see, so that when we go to a customer, we have a lot more information about how we can, what carriers will go be able to help, and how they'll be able to help struggles they're having, why rates are the way that they are, why things are happening, and just really be able to be more transparent for our customers. So I mean, they've been huge for us too, but I mean, kind of segueing from that, I mean, we could talk a little bit about, in our recent, we always try to talk a little bit about some recent news, if there's anything that's out there. And we just got word yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you got word because you were on the board a little bit sooner, but we all got word yesterday in regards to the CARB and or the CTA's kind of battle with CARB, or to kind of just help with ACF ruling. So can you just tell us a little bit about what happened yesterday?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, make it as easy as possible. There's two different websites that truckers need to be registered in. It's one's an acronym called Truckers, and I don't know exactly what it stands for, but just coincidentally, it's Truckers, and the other one is Clean Trucks Check, which is CTC. Uh, the trucks need to be registered into both of those different websites. One's more like a PDTR to make sure your trucks are stable to go to the ports. And then the other one's more for like a smog check that you're going to have to do later in the year. Now, there was a little confusion because the article did come out, the filing did come out, that we're they granted a 30-day extension. That extension is only for the CTC part of it. The truckers part of it, that needs to be completed before the end of the year. Now, in that same article that you're referencing, they do say that once they get the waiver, once CARB gets the waiver, they'll be able to then go back, any truck that was registered into truckers after the 12/31/24 date, which is Sunday, right? They'll be able to go back and remove those trucks.
Ah,
So that's the catch.
So I see.
so it's still recommended then to do it
Yeah.
before the first.
Yeah, if you still plan on operating in the ports, then yes, definitely put your truck into that, because that's where they're going to monitor for the being able to go into ports or rail yards.
And I'm assuming this is going to be the vast majority of trucking companies that are obviously still operating with ICEs, right? I mean, we have um, they're allowing you to put in, obviously you can register EV trucks after 2024.
Yes.
How many people are actually doing that? Do you know how many EVs like are actually being
that are currently operated right now that are registered in the port? The number is 171. 171 trucks currently right now. 168 of those are battery electric, and 3 of them are hydrogen.
That's an insanely low number for
Now,
for
the total in the registry is over 21,000.
Wow. So you're talking about what?
talking about any
Yeah, that's decimals of
Right.
of a percent.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So this still, I mean, this obviously affects the vast majority of trucking companies that are trying to operate at the port. So I mean, so we got some good news of an extension for 30 days.
Yeah, it's some good news of an extension. Some good news that, the CTA could have filed an injunction because CARB doesn't have this waiver to start enforcing it.
Yeah, so essentially they're not going to enforce it until they get the waiver, which could be months, it
could be a year.
But at the end of the day, once they get that waiver, they can go all the way back retroactively to Jan 1
Yep.
and see that you put in 10 trucks after the date and just remove them from the registration.
So let me get this straight, because so they haven't got the waiver, which is why they can't enforce it,
Correct.
and which is also why the CTA can't file an injunction for it.
No, they could file
Oh,
an
they
injunction.
could.
Yeah,
Okay.
they could. But they decided not to.
Got it. Okay. Because they don't have the waiver.
Right. They decided just to go ahead and let them operate, CARB do what they're gonna do, and we're gonna keep the 12/31 date for some future considerations and later date and time.
And I'm assuming it was just like okay, we will not agree to do the junction. You guys will give us a little bit more of extension, a little more leeway, no enforcement until you get the waiver. And there was some sort of communication that was had between the two parties and some sort of a agreement to not file that junction.
Correct. And the lawsuit that CTA filed against CARB, that's still on the table. That has nothing to do with these delays or these new timelines that they're giving away. The lawsuit is still in play. How that's going to turn out,
Nobody knows.
I mean, we got this news yesterday. We're talking about days before the
Right.
deadline. So I can't imagine many companies. I mean, if you were already in the process, you were already, you're already,
Right.
you were foresighted Sundays a day. I have to get everything ready. I mean, if you weren't ready by then, I mean, you were already kind of preparing.
I mean, just to give you a little heads up on what we did, we were, our safety team, credit to them, they were ahead of this. They started probably working on this in like November. And, and it, no fault of theirs, they were still working on some, but only because these websites keep crashing, because you could only imagine the traffic that is going into them. Because people are registering trucks that they might not even bring to California, but on the mere chance that they might bring them to California, they're registering these trucks. So these websites are getting crashed.
Goodness.
I mean, I was in there yesterday and they were struggling just to get for the thing to refresh. And it's like, I could see their frustration.
Right. Wow, that must be frustrating. And I mean, hopefully everyone out there registered the trucks they needed to register, because if not, you're probably late.
You're playing. It's a fine line.
And it doesn't mean you won't be able to operate your truck. You just won't be able to operate it in the ports or the rails.
Right.
And even if you do get through and there's no enforcement and they don't enforce it and they get that waiver 9 months down the road, they can come back and just, completely take you out of that registry.
Correct.
Maybe fine you. I don't really know what that part is.
That's what they've kind of.
But they have that authority to do that.
Yep, they've said that.
So be very, very careful. obviously just information that we want you to have, just because it is something that is very big in the trucking industry right now.
And if you guys have more questions regarding, carb and any of that, shoot us a message and we'll try to,
Yeah,
get
I'll be happy
Sal
to
back out
answer.
here or someone
I
else.
mean,
Or any way we can get you the information, we'll get it to you.
yeah, and by no way is the trucking industry opposed to the regulation.
Yeah, no,
We just, all we want is for them to be done on a realistic time frame. I mean, these zero emission trucks are expensive.
yeah,
They're over $400,000. Now, yes, I understand there's grants, but a grant, if you have 20 or more trucks, the grant's only like $260,000. Um, you're still
Per
looking
truck.
per truck. So you're still looking at after tax licensing over 300,000.
Wow. And imagine all the small companies out there. How can they afford that?
They can't. I mean, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for them to go out and get the grants. I mean,
and then you take it one step further, right? Then it becomes operationally, how well do those trucks function, right? How well is it how easy is it to charge them? How easy is it? How long does that take? How much?
yeah, that's just getting the truck.
What infrastructure is there?
There is hardly any. It's coming online. There's a lot of people starting to, but it's taking time. To meet this 2035 goal that's there, or the way the ACF is written, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, not just that, but the weight on these trucks. I mean, if you're a shipper, you got to realize these trucks are now 28 to 30,000 pounds, which means versus a regular truck's about 18,000. I mean, you're going to lose 10,000 worth of
Cargo.
which means I saw a study out that, for every 1,000 trucks you currently have, you're going to need to add an extra 340-ish trucks more. So now you're going to put more trucks on the road if they're all EV, battery electric, because these batteries are heavy.
Right.
So where we're taking, we're going to add more trucks to move the same amount of cargo.
And you said for every 1,000,
For every 1,000 trucks, yeah.
300. So
An extra 340 some trucks, yeah.
wow.
So you went from 1,000 now to 1,300 at an X cost more, which,
Apart from the, and then the power that needs, and I mean,
as the kids say, the math isn't mathing. If you're adding all this,
hey, that's trucking math for you.
Man, I mean, there's obviously, there's been so much new that has happened over the last. We'll call it last 3-4 years. You have the whole COVID situation, all shipping and how and where that went, and now you have this stuff happening in California, right? AB5 was something that was really big that just happened as well. So I want to kind of get it from your guys' takes, that have been doing this and been in this industry for a while. Okay, we talk about the holiday seasons, right? The holiday times, whether they're, peak season comes usually August, things like that. Has there been anything different this holiday season versus, give it right before COVID, because that was always, COVID in 2020, 2021 is kind of a tough thing to kind of gauge, but 2019, 2018, those years, do you guys see anything drastically different, or do you see this year relatively kind of we're back to a norm?
I wouldn't say we're at a norm yet, but we were at more of a norm than the last few years, right? But things were still slow. We had a slight little bump for maybe a month or month and a half, but it wasn't like
It wasn't the peak season.
it wasn't
that
a
we're
peak
used to.
season as we know it, where it's like August through like middle of November,
You're
just slammed.
It's almost like everyone in the office doesn't want to
right.
work anymore because they're so burnt out. And I definitely have not seen that this year at all.
No.
In prior years, even before COVID, we did have some nice peak seasons that for us at some point started a little earlier in June. Then they would drop again, and then it would start back up in September, October, And then for us, typically, would always go through the end of December for some reason, always through the end of December. And for us, this year it has been pretty different than that. I think November was one of our slowest months this year, and that's in the middle of like peak season. It's just it hasn't been the same for sure.
No, there's been a lot of definitely unstable months where, like, I mean, I remember when I first started 2 years ago, it was like I had calls, can you take this on? Can and it's like, nope,
cannot.
no. Now it's like, I'm even to the point where, like, yeah, send it. We could take it.
Right.
So that has been different this year.
Right. So I mean, just that shift, and I don't remember what it was that I was reading. I was reading an article not too long ago, and I believe it was a CEO of one of the larger trucking companies as well, and he was discussing and he was talking about, this is maybe not a norm, but the industry, and then maybe, like I said, because you have 20 years experience, that it's a cyclical industry, that there are points and times where it's just peaks, and I mean peaks and valleys. Right? There's times where it's pretty low, there's times where it's pretty high, and there's times where, I mean, do you see that kind of playing out here, or do you see this time being a little bit different?
No, I mean, like I said, it's been slow, but I mean, I'll be honest. I'm I like I think it's still gonna be slow next year, going into next year also. I think at least the first half of the year, the first 2 quarters of the year are gonna be slow. Are they gonna be as slow as last year? I don't think so.
Yeah.
We'd like to think not. Right?
Yeah, but it's not gonna be like tradition, And then we have, our Chinese New Year coming up, like that kind of stuff is gonna make things a little slower. But I really, and I've talked to some pretty smart people about this. Like, I really feel confident towards the second half of the year that we're gonna start getting more into the volumes, like the normal kind of peak season volumes. I think because a lot of the warehouse surpluses are kind of dwindled out after this last couple months we've gone through. Um, and I feel like that the tide is coming. It is an election year next year. I mean, and I really like to think that no one's gonna want to screw it up next year. Like, both sides, no matter where you stand. But
It's interesting you say you really like to think that.
yeah, I
really
mean,
love to think
that
that's the case.
And you got the whole news, on a macro standpoint of economics, with interest rates potentially coming down next year.
Yep.
That can, hopefully bump up a little bit of more manufacturing and buying, outsourcing, whatever you want to call it, into the economy. But yeah, like you mentioned though, I do think it's going to be more towards the end of the year, the second half. Um, but I hope it starts a little sooner.
Yeah, I mean, the ports out here in LA Long Beach, they're gonna pick up. I mean, last year we had all the unstable of contract negotiations, right? With the ILWU, so that kind of slowed things down from coming.
Even more.
This year we don't have that.
Sure.
We that already got settled. So now we're moving forward. Cargo is starting to return back. If you look at some of the Port of LA, Port of Long Beach numbers,
Yeah,
cargo is starting to trend up a little
that.
bit.
At least comparable to 2019, things like that.
We are seeing some requests though on our side, on the warehouse side of things, due to the one, the Red Sea incidents, because
Yeah.
they're causing delays going towards the East Coast, and then also the Panama Canal. So that's those are things that are occurring right now that may push more cargo into the West Coast uh, throughout the early part of the year. I don't know how long that'll last, but that can also bump up a little bit of the volumes in the first half of the year.
No, I agree. I agree. Those issues, those things are gonna definitely bring some volume back this way. Um,
Yep, and then it's just being, it's being ready to kind of tackle those, that cargo that comes through. Um, So I mean, so in terms of a 2024 outlook, you guys are kind of seeing more of a back half of the year, hopefully sooner, but back half of the year will kind of be a little bit more of a push. So I mean, so what's the goal this, what is kind of the goal this upcoming year in terms of what we're doing in terms of how we're focusing on on getting that business or being ready for that business when it does come.
I think that's like the thing that you just, I think there's only one way to describe it is to be ready.
Yeah.
I think it's really a year to just be ready. And I think, you guys with the trucks and getting all of that situated, the operations that goes into that. I mean, there's so much that goes into that. And for us on our side too, we got some regulations that we're going to be dealing with this upcoming year, and hopefully we were able to manage it well, and have our sights on 2025, 2026 expansions, and hopefully, I mean, that's the way I like to see it is, we just like to use 2024 to be ready for the next wave.
Yeah, definitely be ready. I mean, we've just added new trucks to the fleet, so that's going to mean bringing on some more drivers on board, getting them used to our culture,
Right.
the way we do things.
That's a big one.
So that's going to be a challenge, but I mean, you're gonna have to ramp up and get ready for it. I mean, it's just not going to come easy. I mean, the one thing that's really still kind of hurting us, and volume might come back, um, but the rates, our rates are probably at some of the lowest rates I've seen in a long time, whole industry wide. I mean,
Right.
um, and those aren't. I don't know if those are set to come back anytime with as much competition as there is. So we got to figure out how to run, lean and mean. Um,
Right. Opera just
our
efficiency.
margins. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't afford to make mistakes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was something that we kind of discussed too, which was focusing on our efficiencies
Yeah.
to make sure that we don't have we're not overstaffed. We're not, I mean, we're our team and the people that we have and what we're doing and the actual, you know, um, operation is being ran as lean as possible, but as efficient as possible so that we
Right.
could max
And
out.
and that's kind of the idea with like the idea of just being prepared, because yeah, because it's like we ran into the COVID where we just had to go, right? There was, you couldn't say no to business. And even though we did to some, we had to get as much as we could, right? So overstaffed, I mean, just like everyone else, right? You overstaff, you just go and do the work. You start getting into these rate decreases where now you gotta start thinking, am I as efficient as possible right now? And you start figuring out ways to become more efficient. We've done it through changes in our training, changes in our handling practices of cargo, more implementation of procedures, monitoring, reporting, uh, that has allowed us to just get nitty gritty, into the data. And I'm all for data
Yeah.
all the time.
Oh, so am I. I've become huge, which is funny. If you would have met me 5 years ago, I don't know.
It
Now
doesn't
it's
mean
like
anything. I don't know what, I don't care about
now
it.
I'm the guy putting spreadsheets together. I don't know how this happened. I'm the guy putting all kinds of graphs and numbers together, and I'm like, how did this happen? But it's cool. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And it gives you a real insight into, or at least an ability to question things. And that's the way I use it. Is I don't use the data and say, oh, that's what we're doing. It's like it allows me to go to my managers and just say, hey, well, look at the data. Can you give me an explanation? What's going on here? And then go out onto the field and really try to see if whatever their explanation is true, right? Or figure out ways. I mean, I did it last week where we just did a timetable for a specific service, mainly our pickups, um, um, where trailers come in to recover their cargo. Believe it or not, it actually takes a little bit longer than to unload containers. And so you start digging into questions. It's the same amount of cargo coming from a container going into a trailer. Why is there such a big discrepancy in times, right? you start questioning all those things and getting nitty gritty. And I think for us, 2024 is gonna, we've done most of that already. We still got some things we got to work on, but 2024 is really gonna be the year to like put it into play and like utilize it to its potential to be ready when more cargo comes in. We don't overstaff again. You start really um, creating like a per unit level of staff. For X amount of containers, I need X amount of staff, and so on.
Yeah, and I think kudos to you because 2023 was very intentional on your part when it came to the efficiency. Where it was okay, we're slow, right? This is the time to figure out one so that we don't have to reduce our staff, right? If we don't have to reduce our staff, we can create a more efficient, product or more efficient service so that we don't have to do any of that. Our margins can still be there. And then, like you say, just to be ready for that 2024. I mean, we've done a lot of brainstorming on different even different models in the brokerage, right? Getting creative with different ways of how we can service another business. We talked a lot about, we're getting some customers that are asking us questions on, hey, I have a shipping department. I have to get rid of all of them, but I still need to ship some stuff. So now we're kind of getting into that field, into that service of providing that and being an extension of someone's shipping department, and really helping them strategize the best ways.
Just getting creative.
Yeah, we're just trying to get creative as much as
Creative and
possible.
bring in extra revenue flow.
Absolutely.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, what you guys as the leaders here, you have to put yourself up high and oversee every aspect, big picture. Exactly. You're the director, right? You're like making a movie. You're just not focused on one little thing. If you're in one certain department, you're like all over the place, and that's your job, and that's what like leaders of companies do, right? Like, don't hold yourself like, I'll be honest, like me, I don't necessarily, hey, that's my title and that's all I do. No, I'll go and question a certain department, and not that I'm trying to like come
Step
down
on
on
it.
them
Right.
or micromanage, but I just want to know, like, hey, are we good?
Right.
And if we're not, you know,
Then
how
it
can I
should be
help?
something. Right.
What can I do to help
Yeah,
get
like,
back there? Absolutely.
and it's not, I don't run that department, but at the end of the day, we're leaders in our companies that we work for, and that should be our goal.
Hmm.
And the people who like, oh, that's not my job or that's not me.
Hmm.
That's a bad approach to take, especially if you're like, a manager or director.
Right. As a leader, you absolutely. It's not a successful formula, especially not in this industry. Especially not in this industry.
It's I always like to think about this industry and leaders in this industry. It's like, yeah, you can know trucking, you can know warehousing, but at the end of the day, the customer needs that full service, right? So your mind needs to be not just on how good you perform your service, but what else can you provide to them that will better your profile, your resume in a sense, right? And you have to learn it all. You kind of have to learn it all to be the best for that your customer.
Absolutely. And I mean, just kind of piggybacking off of that in terms of customers. One thing that I wanted to do in this episode is kind of just we got some questions from some customers lately, and I want to just kind of maybe it's questions that people watching may have as well, and maybe something that with your guys' experience that we can answer. So
Let's go.
it's gonna be two questions, okay, and we'll kind of end it off here, and we'll kind of move from here. But the first question. All right, so this is the question. So I was having a hard time figuring out how common it is for shippers to charge back carriers, trucking companies, for picking loads up late, either delivering late, incomplete pickups, etc. And I was curious on the perspectives on how common is it? Is it something that people do? Do most shippers do it? Do they not do it? Is it kind of like a mix? So charging back. So if a customer's out there, like, if someone was picking up something late, how can I ask, or can I charge that back, or can I not?
Right. I have some experience with getting some chargebacks, more on the warehouse side, for specific customer that required their labels to be placed in a specific corner of a box. And it's like typically it's like an inch on each side. And if you don't place it in those, sometimes they have it on the box, like they'll have like a little square to kind of like help guide you. Um, but it was like very specific. If the label isn't placed there, they get a chargeback. So then we get a chargeback. Especially if we're offering that service to place the labels, right? And we're agreeing to it. It's common for it is common for customers not to let you know that this chargeback even exists. That's where the that's where the miscommunication and disagreements come, is that sometimes they don't tell you these things, but they get charged for it, from the distribution centers that that their product is going to. So ultimately, from my understanding, these charges come from the distribution centers themselves, right? They want to be efficient. They want to be, as smooth as possible. So they'll charge, whether it's the warehouse or the trucker, back on certain charges. Um, I've seen it happen. I'm not gonna say it's necessarily common, but
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't say
I,
it's
I have seen it.
yeah, I wouldn't say it's that common, but I mean, I've seen instances where, like, as a trucker, we've gotten charged for, like, if we miss an appointment, um, then and they just can't take the load, then we have to return it back to our yard. If they get charged for any kind of per diem, or any chassis charges, they'll go back to us and say, hey, if you guys would have made the first appointment, I've seen that happen. If you guys would have made that appointment on time, then
We wouldn't have had
we
this.
wouldn't have had an extra week of chassis charges. So that chassis charge is going to be on you.
Right.
I've seen stuff like that happen. Obviously, if that happens, we have to eat the storage on that. And, out here in this part of LA, it's some of the most expensive real
Real
estate
estate.
around, right? So you can only imagine keeping a box for an extra week.
And how it hurts your operation too.
Right.
But I mean that it's also there's some standard things that happen, right? I mean, you have some standard pays in terms of, like, let's say a trucker comes in and because there's also the other way, right? Where let's say it's a trucker has to now be they're at a warehouse for too long and you have to pay detention and those kind of those are more standardized charges and chargebacks that you would do. And then these are relatively, I would say, just case by case.
Yeah.
Transparency, I think, is the biggest part of it, because if you as a customer are being extremely transparent to your 3PL or to your logistics partner, and you're letting them know what charges you're gonna get, what needs to be done so that there won't be a charge, and they agree and they go on that, and they're providing that service for you, then I think in those cases you might have a little bit more of a leg to stand on with these chargebacks. But transparency is key.
I think it boils down to communication, right? I mean, communicate with everyone. Keep everybody. The more information you give, the less they could come back to you, right? Because you could be like, we already, we discussed this up front. Whatever the issue is, that's why communication's key.
Asking the right questions right up front.
Right. Overkill with communication.
Yeah, overkill it. I agree with you there.
But there are some people who won't give you any kind of updates, any kind of. I mean, those are the people you don't want to partner with. You want to partner with the people who are gonna pick up the phone whenever you call, even if it's a tough conversation. Yeah. I've been on I'm sure we all have, right? You see the phone and you're like, oh man, and you already know you screwed up. You already know you did something wrong.
You have to call you have to make that call because.
But make the call.
Of course.
A lot of people won't even make. But
you have to make the call.
Sometimes, and you know what? I've been on the other end where people have had to make the call, and I've made the call, and at the end of it, it all works out.
Right.
Yep.
Because I'm sure you guys, I know I do, appreciate upfront honesty.
Absolutely. Of course.
That they called me and they told me I might not be happy that the issue happened, but at the end of the day,
But then you're not mad at them,
Right.
You're mad at the situation, but you're not mad at them,
Right.
like, and A lot of times too, like even when things are avoidable, I think those are the ones that are like the toughest to make those calls, because we could have avoided this, or it could have been avoided overall, whether it was not your fault or your fault, and it's just avoidable. So it does get a little bit under your skin to have to make that call, but at the end of the day, if you communicate it, it may turn out a lot better than what you first thought.
I agree. And this one, I mean, I would say relatively similar kind of approach, but this question is that I guess this individual got a post delivery charge. So about a year ago, I was working with a third party company, did a door to door delivery. Everything it was all under full prepayment conditions. We had to pay full quoted amount in order to initiate the shipping process. Goods were delivered. Everything was no problem. But after 4 to 5 months, this customer received an invoice for about $1,700 for additional freight costs. Apparently, it's mostly handling fees and storage fees that occurred after 3 to 4 days of free storage at an airport. So it's an airport. So we're already kind of talking about something a little bit more challenging. This charge is being placed on us. We were never notified or warned about something like this happening. We refused to obviously pay it, and now we're dealing with the collector. Who's in the right? Should that charge be on the customer or not?
My take on this one is you really have to go into like the terms. What were the agreed upon terms from the beginning? There could be some small letter, fine print type of things going on there, but ultimately, if you have a door to door shipment and you prepaid that, for the most part, you should be clear and steer from any fees that may have occurred, because you're essentially saying, I'm gonna give you this amount to get it to my door. I don't want to know anything else about it.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. It's like, I mean, I would say like it's like going and buying a hamburger today, and then you go a week later, the same place, and then oh well, you know what we forgot that there's an extra spreading charge or whatever, and now you owe us $2 from the previous hamburger. I mean, it's same kind of deal, right? Nobody wants to be surprised. I mean, obviously they prepay for a reason. They want to know what the way of handling that would be, before you even send an invoice, hey, there might be some other charges that might come later on down the road.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of this is the fact that they didn't know, right? They're
Yeah.
saying, hey, we didn't even know this was going to come up.
Right.
I think at that point, whoever you're choosing to be that logistics partner, that 3PL.
And that was an airport charge, huh? That it mentions. Man, these airports, their storage. I've gone through that experience as well, man. They charge in the $4, $5, $6 per kilo, and they give you like 2 days free. So you have to recover it ASAP, or else these charges get ridiculous. I've had a $10,000. That was a biggie. That one was big. It hurt.
Yeah, but see, that's where I think whoever that they dealt with, knowing it was an airport, knowing all these things, that transparency and that communication just wasn't there. They should have definitely been more upfront about what the potential stuff could have been, especially to even allow a prepay, knowing that there could be potential of storage, additional storage. That could be okay. You could prepay now, but there might be some stuff coming down the road. So I think all in all is making sure that communication is accurate. Now,
I do think the shipper is right in this one. In my experience, in that 10K experience, we had to eat that up. I mean, it was a charge I couldn't pass on to the customer. It wasn't their fault. And in this instance, it doesn't sound like it's their fault at all. The only thing I can imagine that may have occurred is if there wasn't a customs entry done on time. There was some sort of hold for the markings on the cargo, and all those things are responsibility of the shipper. So if those things, depending, right, again, on the terms of this freight, but if those kinds of things aren't done, it could fall back on the shipper without them even knowing. So really, if you're not shipping things with the right partner, it could cost you a lot. And if you guys want to, get with the right one, get with us. We'll help you out for sure.
And they'll communicate. You guys
And we'll communicate.
Over communicate, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you'll
There you
overkill
go.
it. All right, well, I mean, that's gonna go ahead and do it for this episode. Again, thank you, Sal. Thank you for showing up,
Appreciate it,
man.
This has been fun.
We appreciate you having here and, all the knowledge you bring to us.
Gonna have you on again
Love to do it
as long
again.
as you're up for it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you guys for watching and listening on wherever it is that we listen to the podcast. If you're on YouTube, please hit that like, subscribe button, and we'll go ahead and see you on the next one. Thanks.